Good evening. It's Thursday, March 5th. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Maya Trabulsi. San Diego County health officials are asking residents to get ready for a possible coronavirus pandemic, and they say someone confirmed to have the virus may have exposed others in the South Bay. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman explains.
AT&T says one of its retail employees in San Diego County tested positive for the virus. That led the company to close several stores for cleaning, including this one in Chula Vista. It's unclear yet if the virus spread to anyone else.
Had minimal exposure and some contact with some of their colleagues at work. Those colleagues have all been identified, and they are currently on home quarantine.
As of Thursday, nearly 100 people are being monitored by county health officials for the virus. The county lab has so far tested 37 people, and while some residents are pending, none have come back positive yet.
At this point in time, school closures or limiting gathering of large masses would not be a prudent recommendation.
We'll start seeing restrictions and closures once the virus starts spreading here. Even so, county health officials are asking residents to start stockpiling food, water, and medications.
What is it that you need to sustain yourself for a period of 2 to 3 weeks or more, that where you wouldn't have to go outside and interact with anyone else?
But officials don't want to cause a panic. Recently, shoppers have been flooding big box stores for supplies. One shopper described it as coronavirus chaos.
There is a needle to be thread, frankly speaking, between adequate preparation versus reactive, inappropriate response.
The county health department is working with state officials to identify possible quarantine sites if needed.
We in San Diego County have yet to have any documented community-based transition. But based on what is happening in other parts of the world, and based on what is happening in other parts of the United States, we expect that it is just a matter of time.
Health officials are telling people if they are sick to stay home. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
There are now more than 150 cases in the U.S., mostly on the West Coast, and now there is new guidance on who should be tested for COVID-19. The CDC now says anyone with a doctor's order can be tested with no restrictions. Testing had been limited to people who were hospitalized with coronavirus symptoms or had contact with a confirmed patient. Today, Vice President Mike Pence, who is leading the White House response, said it will be hard to meet demand.
We don't have enough tests today to meet what we anticipate will be the demand going forward. For those who we believe have been exposed, for those who are showing symptoms, we've been able to provide the testing. We're focused very much on a cruise ship just off the California coast today. The Coast Guard delivered a sufficient number of tests for the passengers on that ship.
And some of the passengers on that cruise ship are showing potential symptoms of the virus. And just last month, one man on that same ship died from the disease. Dan Simon has more on how the state is handling this current situation.
The governor of California declaring a state of emergency.
This is no longer isolated in just one part of our state. This is broadly shared as a burden and responsibility up and down the state.
Its first victim in California likely catching the coronavirus while on this Grand Princess cruise ship. Now officials are trying to locate hundreds of other passengers who may have been on the ship in the last month after sailings to Mexico and Hawaii. The man was on the Grand Princess ship that left San Francisco to Mexico on February 11th and returned February 21st, but he was not diagnosed until 10 days after he disembarked. Now that same ship has more than 20 sick passengers and crew members on board and is being held offshore for health officials to begin testing.
We are going to be flying testing kits to the cruise ship, and we are going to be sending those quickly back to the state, where we'll be able to test very quickly, within just a few hours, those samples to determine whether or not these individuals that are symptomatic just have traditional cold or flu or may have contracted the COVID-19 virus.
The U.S. on edge this morning as the number of reported coronavirus cases continues to grow across the country.
We have an epidemic caused by coronavirus. but we have a pandemic that is caused by fear. So I think it's very important here in New York that I provide the factual information to people so they know these are just the facts.
The CDC, local and state governments reporting at least 159 cases. Those are in 15 states. Washington state officials in King County purchased this motel to isolate and treat coronavirus patients.
We're working with the community and hope to have it operational within days.
And they're even building modular homes for those who need to be quarantined.
At this point, we don't know when it's going to end, and we're thinking about weeks and more into the future of how we're going to staff here.
Both Amazon and Facebook urging their Seattle workforce to work from home until the end of the month, after each company had one employee test positive for coronavirus. The outbreak is also having an effect on the travel industry. United Airlines cutting its domestic flight capacity by 10% and international flights by 20%. JetBlue following with a 5% cut to their capacity.
There are a lot of people who know what the cruise ship passengers are going through, including a man from the Bay Area who is finally back home.
Are you glad to be home?
You know, I think in a one word, damn right.
From Japan to Texas and finally back to California. A bit later, we'll have the story from this 81-year-old passenger who spent nearly a month in quarantine. It's turning out to be a deadly flu season in San Diego County. 6 people died this past week, bringing the total so far to 80. At this time last year, there were 44 deaths, 77 overall. County health officials are urging people to keep washing their hands, get vaccinated, and stay home if they are sick. The San Diego County District Attorney's Office will ask for the death penalty for John Ernest. He is the man accused of killing a woman and injuring 3 others at a Poway synagogue last April. Ernest allegedly opened fire inside the Chabad of Poway congregation and then called 911 after fleeing. Authorities say the shooter posted an open letter in which he claimed to have spent 4 weeks planning the attack. In the letter, he also claimed to be responsible for an arson attack at the Islamic Center of Escondido a month prior to the shooting at the synagogue. The case involving the accused Golden State Killer is renewing a debate on the death penalty, its costs, and if it can even be carried out. Jessica Mensch reports on a possible plea deal and what it means for those seeking justice.
Accused of 13 murders and more than 50 rapes, suspected Golden State Killer Joseph DeAngelo is finally set to answer for his alleged crimes. But according to a court filing from his defense attorney, he's now hoping to avoid a trial. This dismissal motion filed in Sacramento County Court late Monday says he would plead guilty to his charges in exchange for a lifetime sentence to put the death penalty off the table.
It might be best to just resolve it now. The cost, not just in money, but in time and happiness that will be drained out, that never comes back.
Attorney Mark Reichel points to the $20 million this lengthy trial is expected to cost taxpayers as one of the reasons to take a plea deal. He says at 74 years old, DeAngelo would likely die of natural causes anyway, before facing the death penalty.
Right now we have a governor who's imposed a moratorium on the death penalty. There will be no death penalty executions in California under the current governor. So a very good chance the next governor of California may take the same position.
But Assemblyman Jim Cooper says these victims deserve their day in court if they want it.
But just think about it, if that was your daughter, your mother, your sister that happened 2 years ago, and you missed all that time with them by them being a murder victim, you know, how would you feel? So, I mean, we've got to think about victims here. It's not always about the suspect.
Cooper wrote a bill to reimburse counties for the cost of the trial, shifting the burden to the state, but it failed in committee last year. He's reintroducing the bill ahead of the planned trial. In a letter sent to victims, the Public Defender's Office asks for their input, writing, quote, "We would like to reach a resolution to the case that avoids a trial, satisfies all parties, and provides a more immediate resolution to the case."
That was Jessica Mensch reporting. Both sides will be back in court next week. Elizabeth Warren ended her presidential campaign today after a disappointing Super Tuesday.
I will not be running for president in 2020, but I guarantee I will stay in the fight for the hardworking folks across this country who've gotten the short end of the stick over and over.
The Massachusetts senator came in third place in her home state's primary. She also came in third in Iowa, fourth in New Hampshire and Nevada, and fifth in South Carolina. Now, Warren says she has spoken to frontrunners Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden, but needs time to think about endorsing another candidate for president. The next primaries will be held Tuesday in Idaho, Michigan, Mississippi, Missouri, North Dakota, and Washington State. Facebook is pulling some of President Trump's campaign ads. The ads used language urging people to respond to something called an official congressional district census, but the ad has nothing to do with the official 2020 census. Facebook says it's removing the ad to erase any confusion. The company has been criticized for not fact-checking political ads. And President Trump's Remain in Mexico policy for asylum seekers could end next week in California and Arizona. A federal appeals court is striking down the policy. Those two states fall under the court's jurisdiction. Tens of thousands of people have been forced to wait in Mexico as their asylum claims are processed. Only 1% have been granted entry to the U.S. since the policy began. The new ruling will take effect March 12th, giving time for the Supreme Court to weigh in. A new study shows exactly how devastating a strong earthquake could be for San Diego County. KPBS reporter Joe Hong explains the risk and how local governments are trying to prepare.
The Rose Canyon Fault runs along the western coast of San Diego County, and research shows there's nearly a 1 in 5 chance that an earthquake of 6.7 magnitude or greater could happen in the next 30 years. A newly published study shows that a 6.9 earthquake could destroy 8,000 buildings, damage 120,000 more, displace 36,000 households, and cost $38 billion in damages. Researchers presented these findings at this week's National Earthquake Conference in San Diego, where experts and government officials gathered for panels and demonstrations, including a shake cottage that allows people to experience what a large earthquake feels like. Heidi Tremaine is the executive director of the Earthquake Engineering Research Institute that looked at how a 6.9 earthquake could impact the county.
We're expecting a large fault rupture, almost 6 feet, and also a lot of liquefaction impacts, which basically is softening of the soil and liquefaction of the soil that causes a lot of impact to buried and underground infrastructure like water distribution pipes. And so we're worried that the coastal communities could really be lacking some basic services for many months after an earthquake of this magnitude.
The Rose Canyon Fault starts off the coast above Encinitas, veers inland through La Jolla, and runs straight through downtown San Diego. The researchers recommend that the county conduct its own study of its utilities and infrastructure to better understand the regional risks. Gary Johnston is the Chief Resilience Officer for the San Diego County Office of Emergency Services. He said the county is considering short and long-term solutions.
In the short term, I would consider, getting a group of regional experts together and let us take a look at these recommendations and determine maybe a way ahead as far as how we can address some of them and mitigate some of these things so that we're better prepared in the future if, in fact, we have an earthquake along this fault.
But Johnson said his office needs to balance the risk of an earthquake with the variety of other natural disasters that threaten the region. Joe Hong, KPBS News.
New images are giving us a better picture of the health of our ocean. KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson shows us how local scientists are studying the connection between warming oceans, oxygen levels, and sea life.
This is an example of some of the video that we're analyzing for this research.
Natalia Gallo, a postdoctoral researcher at the Scripps Institution of Oceanography, points to the footage from the seafloor on the Gulf of California, just off the Mexican coast. The pictures come from a remotely controlled submarine.
So here we have two lasers that are 29 centimeters apart. That's what allows us to get an idea of the scale that you're looking at.
Gallo says researchers are trying to gauge the impact of a warming ocean on fish.
So the really big question that we're trying to understand is how sensitive deep sea communities and in general ocean communities are going to be to these changes.
Gallo surveyed the northern Gulf, which is closer to normal ocean conditions, and the southern Gulf, which has one of the planet's most extreme low-oxygen ocean zones. Gallo says two factors had the biggest impact on fish.
The temperature and oxygen are really contributing the most to the story of which environmental variables are most tightly correlated with the existing communities that we see now in the Gulf of California.
The findings will help scientists understand changes in other locations. As the ocean gets hotter, the water is not capable of holding the same amount of oxygen.
We know that oxygen is declining in the ocean globally, and that the really low oxygen zones, the oxygen minimum zones, are expanding as the ocean warms.
Lisa Levin is a biological oceanographer at San Diego's Scripps Institution of Oceanography. She says scientists already expect certain outcomes from climate-related changes.
The body size of animals will get lower as the ocean warms and oxygen declines, and overall the oceans will become less productive.
The research findings are published in the current edition of the journal Marine Ecology Progress series. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
A follow-up now on a story we first brought you a few years ago. It involves the Omler family, who were desperately searching for a diagnosis for their son Damien's mysterious disease. Tonight, KPBS science and technology reporter Shalina Chatlani with an update on what scientists now say is a one-of-a-kind diagnosis.
11-year-old Damien Omler slams his back against his wheelchair as he watches guitarist Slash shredding on the TV. Damien's mom, Gracie Omler, says he loves to jam out to 80s rock legends at his home in Chula Vista.
Do you want more, or are you all done? You want to get out? Where you want to go?
Damien can't walk. Sometimes he needs a feeding tube, and he gets help using the bathroom. But he also has lots of fun.
2. We'll take him to that. 1.
While Damien can't communicate, he's always laughing.
He just loves being silly. He's your typical boy. Yeah, he likes to throw things, or he likes to play with brother.
Damien has a form of congenital disorders of glycosylation, or CDG for short. It's a type of extremely rare disease that causes the body's cells to malfunction because sugars aren't properly attaching to proteins. But there are over 100 different forms of CDG because different genetic abnormalities can lead to this poor sugar-protein connection. So Father Donnie Omler says for years, they didn't have a specific diagnosis.
They were calling it CDG-X because there was no subtype to it. So that was kind of uncertainty. It was kind of a bit of a downer for us because we were like, okay, how do we include ourselves with everybody else in the CDG community?
But when scientists at Sanford Burnham Prebys Medical Discovery Institute in La Jolla took on the case 5 years ago, they were able to find the mutation. Doctors searched for several years to find another patient with Damien's mutation, but they couldn't find one. And after consulting with the National Institutes of Health, doctors say Damien has a new type of CDG. And as far as they know, he's the only person in the world with it.
I've been involved in diagnosis of 400 different patients.
At his lab in La Jolla, genetics researcher Hudson Freeze points to a wall filled with numerous photos of children he's worked with who have CDG or other conditions.
That's my sister. And she's also disabled, and so, I kind of know what it's like for the families to go through all the struggles that they have.
Freeze started working with Damien 5 years ago when UC San Diego doctors turned the case and Damien's skin cells over to him. What they found is an entirely new gene in a DNA sequence where CDG can develop. So they're calling this disease CDG-GET4, which refers to that mutated gene in Damien's body that's stopping proteins from being guided to the right place.
What it does is to help proteins go from where they're made within a cell and gets them to the right place. Now, it's not that they just sort of walk a road on their own. They have helpers. They have chaperones along the way. And with Damien's, one of his chaperones was almost completely gone.
Freeze says this discovery is significant because understanding which mutations lead to CDG can help scientists design more therapies to treat it.
What this does is to open up a whole new pathway of thinking for people who said, well, I never thought about possibilities in that group of genes or that kind of physiological function, but maybe I better go look for those now.
And that could open doors for other CDG patients to also get treatment. In Damien's case, Freeze says there's one drug that he knows of which could potentially help Damien, but it has some uncomfortable side effects. He says the other benefit of finding these genetic mutations is that people can do more family planning if they know the mutation is hereditary. And, of course, families can also get some sense of closure. And back at the Omler family house, Damien's father, Donnie, says that's been huge.
When we found that out, it was kind of more of a perspective for us to understand how rare Damien actually is. That was breathtaking for us.
He says special needs parents are often left with questions, and even with the diagnosis, they'll still want to learn more.
We've told everybody we take it one day at a time. That's all you can do.
In the meantime, they think it's important for special needs parents to know they have a community of support. And Free says he believes as Damien's case gets more publicity, more patients like him will be discovered and could potentially get treated.
Bye.
Shalina Chatlani, KPBS News.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, the toll of coronavirus continues to roil financial markets. We examine the cost of the outbreak. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
A week from now, the Aztecs will be playing in March Madness. But first, a postseason tune-up in the Mountain West tournament. The men's basketball team passed their first test, beating Air Force in Game 1 in Las Vegas. Tomorrow, they'll play Boise State in the tournament's semifinal. Start time is set for 6.
Got it.
Update now on the Padres and how to watch their games online. YouTube TV announced it will continue to carry Fox Sports San Diego. Last week, the channel was in danger of being dropped due to a stall in negotiations with its new owner, Sinclair Broadcasting. YouTube TV has emerged as one of the top online platforms for live television as viewing habits change. It's been a dry winter and San Diego is well below its average amount of rainfall, but that could change soon with a couple of storm systems headed our way. Dajia Swad has our forecast.
It has been pretty dry across much of Southern California since the start of the year. Here in San Diego, we're usually seeing about 4.54 inches of rain, and so far only coming in at 0.87 inches. So we are well below average in terms of rainfall, and tonight we continue to be on the dry side, dropping down to 57 in San Diego, but noticing plenty of clouds, especially as you head closer to the coast. Also going to be some clouds finding themselves into Borrego Springs and Mount Laguna. We are going to start to notice a bit more moisture on the way. We're noticing the clouds because of an onshore flow ahead of our next front. Now this front will be sparse with the moisture for Southern California, but there will be another system in the upcoming week that will bring a better chance for some widespread wet weather. Topping off at 86 in Borrego Springs, 58 Mount Laguna, high of 68 in Oceanside, and the upper 60s as well for San Diego. So not feeling too bad. Tomorrow, that warm air will continue to be bottled further to the east as our front starts to sag a little further to the south for Saturday, and that will also usher in some chances for rain and shower into Southern California, as well as, once again, more precise into San Diego County. Next week, there's what we have, our jet plunges, and this is where we have our upper level disturbance. This will feed in rain across Interstate 5 and even bring in some spotty activity further to the east into Vegas and even into Cedar City. We are going to notice a chance for some showers at the coast for Saturday with highs in the 60s, remaining in the 60s for your extended forecast, and then another chance for some wet weather to really rev up here into your Tuesday. Also looking at a very similar situation for inland areas. Cooler Saturday compared to Friday, a brief break from wet weather, and then that rain picks up for the early week. We'll also be looking at rain chances increasing here in the mountains for the early week with our disturbance off the coast. That will continue to move inland, and deserts also have a chance at rain for your Monday and Tuesday. Reporting for KPBS News, I'm your meteorologist, Dajia Swad. Back to you.
Wells Fargo is raising the minimum wage for 20,000 of its workers. They'll make $20 an hour, a raise that will be phased in by the end of the year. Wells Fargo is following a trend in the industry for higher pay. Bank of America will be paying a minimum wage of $20 per hour by the end of this month. Another day of wild swings in the stock market. Today was deep in the red. The Dow fell nearly 1,000 points. Much of it is being driven by how the coronavirus outbreak is disrupting travel and other elements of the global economy. Overall, the Dow is up more than 700 points this week. Now imagine taking the cruise vacation of your dreams and then getting stuck on board because of the coronavirus. And if that sounds bad enough, wait until you hear what else happened. More now from reporter Eric Thomas.
Are you glad to be home?
You know, I think in a one word, damn right.
And who could blame 81-year-old Rick Saber? He and his wife set sail from Yokohama, Japan on January 20th for a 2-week Pacific cruise. Then, one of the passengers had to be let off early because of illness and later tested positive for COVID-19. That meant an early trip back to Japan and an unexpected 14-day quarantine.
We had about 1 hour every 2 days, and to walk the deck with the people in our particular floor.
After 2 weeks with no symptoms, the Sabres hoped to go home. Instead, they got an all-expenses-paid charter flight to an Air Force base for another 14-day quarantine. Not nearby Travis, as they'd hoped, but Lackland in San Antonio, Texas, as they were told after takeoff.
A big whoop that went up, not a happy one, because most of us, I think, on that flight actually live in the Bay Area.
The stay was less claustrophobic than the cruise ship. On Monday, they were medically cleared to fly home, but there was another delay. The mayor of San Antonio went to court to block the passengers from being released into his city. A judge refused, but early Tuesday, the CDC agreed to bus them straight to the airport without stopping and put them on flights.
Very early, they said you have 10 minutes to get your stuff out, and they got us out of there as fast as they could to the airport.
That was Eric Thomas reporting. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great evening.